And welcome back to This is Dundermoose. I am your host. This is Dundermoose, and I am joined today. This is a double whammy. We got two guys that have already been on the show before. I think I've had one return guest already, Stormforge, but this is the first time I've had two guests come back and both be on at the same time. So I'm kind of geeked for this. Also, we're going to be talking about my favorite topic on the channel lately, Battle Braunsteins. So I got Vomitron and RDubs, and we may have some others join later as well. But why don't we kick it off? RDubs, I'll have you start. How long have you been playing in this campaign? And tell me about your character.
I injected myself for the Battle Braunstein, dude, and I actually didn't know the lore, bro. Okay. It was amazing. It was great, dude.
So you just butted your way in.
I did.
Do you recommend other players use that strategy?
I mean, it was a freaking good time, dude. But I will say, I got my ass handed to me pretty good. But it's turned into some fun play afterwards too, man. And I got to say, Vomitron's rad for letting me jump in and jump into that session. I've been lurking in that server for a while, but.
So tell me about that moment, Vomitron, when this guy who's not been playing in the campaign at all, how did that go down?
It actually worked out pretty well, I think, because part of the reasons why I wanted to do the Battle Braunstein was because of B-Dubs and his wrestling promo charisma. And it, kind of threw down the gauntlet. I was like, all right, let's get one going. And
he threw that gauntlet down on this show.
Yeah.
He took a moment between bullying me and making fun of my mustache. He took a breath to get a word in edgewise and say, if you do not have your own Battle Braunstein before June, you are no longer worthy of the BroSR hashtag. Right?
Yeah.
So that went out on Twitter. I don't know if you saw my episode or if you saw Twitter or what, but like that was B-Dubs was the inspiration for make adventuring great against Battle Braunstein. Yeah,
absolutely. So we kind of have a situation where one player has pretty much dominated the geopolitical scene, and he has slowly but surely taken over multiple settlements. He's the highest level PC. He is the necromancer.
Oh, the necromancer. Okay.
Yeah, and he's one of the guys who've been playing for about 3 years. He's in a European time zone, so that's probably why he's not with us tonight. But he's a very good wargamer. Like that's his bread and butter. I'm on another Discord with him. It's a war games centric Discord, and that's kind of why we met. So he knows a lot about how to organize. He's very crafty. He'll read the rules. He reads the player's handbook, reads the spells, comes up with insane tactical strategies.
Sounds like Macho Mandolf to me.
He is kind of our Macho Mandolf, but so he kind of like the political situation had kind of solidified. And so I was thinking, well, let's see, could a Battle Braunstein shake things up? Could someone possibly topple Kel from his perch? Let's find out. So I had a bunch of factions that were more or less generated from the domain encounters that you're supposed to be generating on a periodic basis.
Yes.
And these monster encounters would usually get resolved because one of the other players had a mercenary company that was contracting itself out to go lair stomping. But, there were just some creatures that they ran into they didn't want to deal with. And in my mind, it was like, okay, well, these are as long as they're allowed to fester, they were going to become basically factions unto themselves. So one of them was this domed city. It's modeled after Logan's Run.
City of Domes.
City, right? And it's an opportunity to put some Gamma World stuff in there and androids. The androids gained notoriety because in one of the sessions that we had, the players were like, we're going to try to penetrate this dome city. And they got inside and they met with the inhabitants, which are, these androids that are dressed like women from the 70s. Are
Are they the fembots from Austin Powers?
No, they're a little more toned down than that, but
Okay.
they just they're really tough, and they're immune to just about everything that the players had, and the players got their asses kicked. And as they're trying to get their guys out of this situation, one of the players called them the Terminator whores. It wasn't a term of endearment. So there's this, so there's a city out there that the players never dealt with that's filled with these androids. And so RDubs is like, hey, I'd like to get in on this. And I'm like, I have a faction for you.
Give me 55 female androids and I'm game, bro.
So did you reach out to him on Discord or Twitter, or how did you?
Yeah, I was in the Discord, and the event popped up, so I signed up for the event.
You were like, I'm in, I'm down, and in Vomitron, you were like, okay, cool, I got a guy to run the fembots. So how does York has joined us? How did his character come about? York, you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about maybe some of the background before the Battle Braunstein that you had with the game and the character that you were playing?
Sure. So I came across his Discord from X, Twitter, I don't know, like a year ago.
Okay.
And so I basically just lurked and asked questions and got their advice for situations in my own game. And when I heard about this Battle Braunstein, I had read about RDubs and BDubs and all the cool stuff that had happened. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. I want to get in on this.
Right on.
Love Crusaders and Holy Knights and all that. So I asked, hey, do you have like a lawful good Crusader faction? Or like, that's West Fen. I'm like, great, sign me up. And so
let me get the map up so we can see what we're talking about here. So you said West Fen. Where is that? Where am I?
It's that little yellow blob in between all the red.
Oh, okay. Oh, it's not West Fen. It's Wesk Fen.
Yeah,
got it.
Yeah, and it's great having enthusiasm and all that, but it's no substitute for actually sitting down and reading the rules. Basically, so basically, I got handed all this information, and then James is like, "Oh, by the way, two pilgrim groups have settled down." And I'm like, "Okay, do you have any stats on them?" And he's like, "No." Okay, so I spent like 2 nights basically going through the monster manual and rolling up all the stats and items, by the way, of these 2 pilgrim groups, and I came up with quite a few decently powerful clerics and paladins. So I started rubbing my hands together. I'm like, all right, I know Kel is this necromancer guy. Much of his army are skeletons. I know high-level clerics automatically destroy skeletons. It should be a cakewalk, right?
Right on. Where's Kel?
He's
up in.
Yeah, that's Brimstone.
Yeah,
so Brimstone is Kel's domain. So you are like the closest one to the most dangerous patron in the scenario.
And so I looked at the objectives, and I thought to myself, oh yeah, Kel and Erebir, they're totally gonna go to war with each other because the objectives, that's what the objectives are. So I was like, okay, so all I have to do is wait on the sidelines and then throw my weight to one side or the other, or pick something off if the opportunity presents itself.
The risk strategy.
Right. And just nothing happened the way I thought it would, and
go fig.
Yeah.
So were you intimidated? This was your first, I think it's everybody's first Battle Braunstein. It's such a new, unless you're like David Wesley and those guys from the Blackmore group or Blackmore bunch. But were you intimidated to start this, or were you like, I got a plan, I've read the rules, I know what I'm doing?
Honestly, my attitude as things started getting into motion was just, this is awesome, this is cool. Win or lose, I'm happy to be here, and I hope I can make my mark on the game world, which
right on.
I suppose I did after a fashion.
Yeah,
all right, made a mark.
So what I'm trying to get at is if somebody's watching this right now and they're like, man, I'd love to do this, or even I got invited to a Battle Braunstein and I have no idea what I'm doing. From the players, how would you suggest they prep to take part in something like this?
Take a couple of days to sit down, read the AD&D rules, ask lots of questions, try and come up with a plan. Doesn't have to be a good plan, doesn't have to be an in-depth plan. Just have like an objective. This is what I want to do, and try and pursue that to the best of your ability, and just don't be afraid to roll with the punches. Don't be afraid to
I think also jumping in without knowing the campaign world ahead of time, the week before, and I didn't know any of the stats or any of the troop counts, had no like intelligence on any of these factions. So my first thing was to try to gather some of that for the week before the Braunstein, because we had downtime for, what was it, about a week or 2 weeks before?
Well, it was about 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay, so you had a ramp up. And
Mhm.
Vomitron, were you like getting hammered by all your participants in those 2 weeks? Like, what does this mean? How do I do this? What are the rules?
There was a lot of that, and I was still trying to figure out how I wanted to structure the time that we were going to spend. So it was like a normal session, except it was just focused on the Braunstein. And I kind of came up. I thought, well, it'd be like diplomacy, right? So we would have periods of time where players could talk to each other, make deals, decide what they want to do. Then they would submit their orders to me by a private message, and then I would figure out what happened for that day, and then we would cycle to the next turn and just keep doing that. And if there was a big battle, we'd play it out. I said, well, let me set aside some victory conditions. And so the victory conditions were basically controlling cities or raiding or capturing different points. And
did those come from somewhere outside of AD&D? Like, do you have a war game background and that's why you came up with that? Or is there something in the game that suggests that to you? Or was that just you as a DM going, this is what will motivate them to actually not be the get-along gang for 2 hours?
That was my primary concern, right? I wanted points of conflict. And without making it like if you're going to play a World War II game, obviously at some point the Germans and Russians will be fighting each other. I didn't want to make it, ironclad where Kel and Erebir had to fight. But I also wanted to make sure that if Kel and Erebir were not fighting each other, it wasn't going to be boring. So I was trying to sprinkle in enough objectives to get people interested in not just turtling up. And I think that kind of worked. And part of me was kind of worried because, Kel is a PC and I didn't want to kind of like front load failure, and give him a fighting chance to defend himself against potentially 6 different factions in case they all decided, hey, it's time to take out Kel, right?
I know how he feels.
But it's like, at the same time, it's like, well, this will be a major challenge. And he's been challenged before and he's always kind of like come out on top. So it's like, well, I don't know if he's going to do it again. And there was actually the most important battle actually occurred in the week after the Battle Braunstein. Yorick and myself and Kel got on a chat stream and just worked out the entire battle. And I did not know if Kel was going to survive.
Oh, wow.
And I'll let Yorick tell that story about how that shaped up. But it was down to the wire.
It kind of was.
Or do you want to kind of step through like the Battle Braunstein, how things shaped out and what happened? And
let's not jump to after it's already over just yet. But hold on to that thought, York, and please remind me if I keep going.
Sure.
But I still just kind of want to camp on for viewers that are so interested in this stuff and want to try it for themselves. So we got kind of the player's perspective from York and a little bit from RDubs. RDubs, is there any other thing that advice you would give to players getting ready to play in their first one?
Take the downtime seriously. I'd play the downtime.
Play the downtime.
Yeah, play the downtime.
100%. Downtime is extremely important. Use the downtime to gather intelligence and decide, okay, who's weak, who's not, who has the 1,000 strong skeleton army, and okay, what's some leverage that I could get? You know, it's like all the great captains and commanders of history. You know, they didn't win the battle by just jumping into a battle. They prepared the battle beforehand to try and tip everything in their own favor. So do the same thing with your own downtime. Do everything you can to tip the scales in your favor before the actual battle starts.
Right on. Thanks, guys. So I also want to now get the DM perspective, because there may be people watching that are like, I want to run this, but nobody's going to invite me. I'm going to have to set my own up. Right. So I'm assuming if you're going to DM one, that you at least know the rules for the system that you're going to be running it in.
Yes.
What else? What were some of the problems you needed to solve, and what were some of your solutions as you set this up?
Well, I think the main thing I was concerned about is we would get involved with a battle that was going to take 3 hours to resolve. Yeah. Which, I mean, if that was going to happen, it was going to happen. And we'd actually been running a series of battles for almost 3 years. And so I think we kind of understood like how to set up the initial forces. Everything was being run through AD&D. We were well versed enough that I don't think that would be a problem. We probably would get through the battle, right? But I would be pretty pushy about, let's not take forever to, you know, try to figure out what we're going to do on each individual turn.
Yeah.
The other stuff that might be kind of tricky is, you know, AD&D is not a trivial rule set, and what we were even commenting about this week is that, you know, every time I read that DMG, I'm picking up something I never realized was there before. So
yeah, I had Dornell on not too long ago, and he referred to the DMG as a non-Euclidean book.
Right. So the nice thing was we had 4 or 5 people who actually have also read the DMG, and we all enjoy getting into these debates about what does this mean and could this been written better. So I didn't really feel like if there was going to be any kind of questions about a rule, someone was going to know the answer.
Yeah.
So that's always great to fall back on.
So you've got really good players. That's awesome.
Right. Yeah, I'm very lucky in that sense. But even if no one had read the rules, we still would have done okay, right?
I think so. Yeah.
I think I was mostly intimidated by the fact that I'd never really done this before, and I didn't know how people were going to react to, hey, you know, your guy just got assassinated. What's going to happen? Or
well, he's in a meeting.
Someone's going to keep trying to assassinate your guy, and it just never will freaking work.
Yeah. Well, when he gets back out of his meeting, you guys can ask Macho Mandoff how he feels about that. He's in the chat. That might have happened in one that I took part in.
See, Brian is asking, was the downtime done secretly? Yes and no. We have a bunch of channels dedicated to settlements. So sometimes people would go in there and say, this is what we're doing. But I did tell people, I said, listen, if you want to communicate with me privately, I'll respect that. I'm not going to spill your secrets unless you don't care. So some people were saying stuff in public. They didn't really care if anybody knew. Other people like RDubs were pretty much like just direct messaging me saying, I have a question about this. I would like to do this, you know, so on and so forth. During the actual Battle Braunstein, I told the players, I said, you should feel free to communicate with each other as much as you want. But if you're going to send orders to me, send them to me privately. And then I'll just, as soon as everyone's got their stuff in, I'll go to the public chat and say, here are all the orders that I got. This is the result of what happened.
So were you doing this on a video chat in Discord, or were you doing it all? It
was all Discord voice.
Discord voice. Okay.
And I also, I did bring up, I think we're using the Owlbear tool.
Oh, okay, cool.
With a map, so I can move some tokens around just to give people an idea about this is how I understand things are moving, just to avoid communication problems where people would say,
allow the patrons to talk to each other irrespective of where their tokens were on the map?
For the Braunstein, yeah.
Okay.
So they could make deals. That's what I want. I want people to feel like they could make deals and break them, and just like a normal diplomacy game.
Mm-hmm. It was great.
Sweden or Austria and England could go off into a corner and chit chat, and Russia's like, what are they doing over there?
That's the magic, right?
I don't.
Oh,
well,
I just
mean,
saw them go into chat room 3. What are they up to?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So the basics, a map, which if you're doing this as part of your own ongoing campaign, that's not a problem. You've already got a map, right?
Yeah.
This map is a little bit different than the one you normally use, right? Like this is a little bit abstracted because you said
Yes.
worldographer was zoomed in and detailed.
Yeah, Worldographer, I have a love-hate relationship with. So I zoomed out to the 6 mile, because normally a 1 mile hex, but
Yeah.
things have gotten so big, it's like 6 miles is more convenient. I just used an overlay and just kind of roughly laid out the geography. So this is pretty accurate. I mean, it's not super precise, but this gives you a pretty good idea where every single faction was located and their relative positions to each other.
Okay. So you got a map and you know how many factions and what they are.
Yep.
Do you as the DM know their makeup, or are you depending on the players to tell you here's how many troops I have and that kind of thing?
Well, so for something like Erebir, which is a very large city, the patron who is running Erebir already has a breakout of all of the troops that he has, plus a bunch of NPCs. And the same thing for Kel. Now, everybody else, I pretty much had to, well, as York was saying, I kind of said, oh yeah, by the way, there were 2 pilgrim groups. Just look in the monster manual and, generate the numbers.
Yeah.
So I kind of had a rough idea about what they were. But if someone had come to me and said, hey, I want to scout these guys out, if the scouting was successful, I would then have to say, okay, I need to know, more or less what your troop count is, and then relay that information.
Got it.
Because when you have high level clerics, they have things like divination spells. So that opens up, you can pretty much get a lot of information if you ask the right questions.
So I'm guessing the where I'm looking at, or what I'm trying to get to, is how much prep as a DM, how much of it do you need to know going in, and how much can you say, hey, I don't need to obsess. I'll just ask my players to roll something up. And if a divination goes off, then I can just ask the other guy what's going on and have them tell me in the moment. And then I'm not over prepping. Like, where do you draw the line on that?
Well, I think you have to ask, how comfortable you are with prep addiction, because the way I've been running the game for about 2 years now is I don't have the luxury of doing a lot of prep because I never know what the players are going to do. So I'm very much comfortable with zero prep, heavy lifting. So for me, I'm really comfortable with trusting the faction people to generate a lot of these details.
Got it.
I don't necessarily need to know every detail. And I mean, it's nice to know, if I'm running a game that happens to bump into some faction elements, I'd like to know what I'm dealing with. But for the Battle Braunstein, I didn't feel like that was the major problem. I mainly wanted to make sure that everyone who was participating was getting something out of it as a player.
Yeah.
I feel it's going to be fun for everybody involved. But I think if you don't have a campaign that's been running for a few years, it might be helpful to actually do the groundwork and just generate, top level numbers for every faction. And I think,
or at least know where in the DMG or the monster manual you can send them and say, go to page 128 and then roll up your brigands or whatever, right?
So I know there was a Twitter thread, X thread, where I think Jeff Rowe was asking about that one Dragon Magazine article about the bandit kingdoms. And he was like, could anybody run this better than Decemborg? And I think that's an example where if you don't really have a lot of details already built, you could just take that article directly and be like, hey, this is the human kingdom. This is how the power is split up. And just say, okay, you get this guy, you get that guy. I think that would work really well.
Right on. Oh, RDubs, you went on mute. I saw your mouth moving, but I didn't hear any of your wisdom.
That's what it does. That's what everyone says, man. It just moves, bro. I said that the Judges Guild, the Wilderlands, is really set up for that as well. I think Sar Bombadil is playing around in that all the time right now, if I'm not mistaken. And it's amazing for just picking up a faction-based play.
And where is that? That was
the Judges Guild, Wilderlands of High Fantasy in that book series, and all of that is all set up for faction play. It's sick, man. I pick it up with my kids constantly to just like, okay, you take this city, and then move around with the ODD rules and then fight, right? Or one he works as well. But he's here, yeah. He's saying it, yeah. He says, "Heck yeah, dude! It's amazing, amazingly." If I was a GM or a ref that needed to set up a Battle Braunstein, I would pick up that and I would use that for sure.
Cool. See, this is where you get the good stuff, guys. You are on the right channel for learning how to run this. So we got a map, we got factions and force numbers, and then you get to the goals. You were saying,
Yeah.
Do you like? Because the way I was thinking about this is maybe like start off with some goals for each faction or just one, and say, hey, you don't need to stick to this. This is what your guys care about at the beginning, but you're free to change it. Or do you just blanket everybody? Here's how you win this, or this.
Well, that's the route I went with,
Okay.
because I wasn't sure. Because if I tell everybody what their goal to win is, I felt like that's again front loading the challenge for everybody. And it's like, well, I'm kind of pointing everybody at each other in a particular way, and I really wanted to have a little bit more open ended. So I kind of just said, hey, the big 3 cities or settlements, those are the big prizes. And there's a bunch of minor prizes out there if people feel like rolling those up.
Yeah.
But I kind of wanted the conflict to be about who's actually controlling those big cities.
Okay. Cool. Because I feel like if you have people that have been playing in the sessions, they're going to have their own goals and priorities and stuff. And then you got people like RDubs that just ask their way in, and like he's probably like,
the interesting thing about the game was that the game was really interesting because the faction I chose really didn't have a large force. Like it just didn't. It was a small force of 55 androids and some useless teddy bears, dude. Well, really, no, they weren't useless. The plebes that were living in the city that were useless. I think I didn't have enough capital probably to train them to fight. Didn't have enough time to train them to a fighting force. So I was really working with like 55, 100 freaking boxes of hit dice, essentially.
Gotcha.
Now the androids aren't anything to like laugh at. They are they're 4 hit dice or whatever. But I did not have the resources or the forces of someone that had a city and the garrison, or like Kel, who has a whole bunch of freaking skeletons that do whatever he wants, right? Yeah. And so yeah, it was very. I think it was set up very well. It was a very fun game to play, and there were some unique challenges with the faction that I ended up choosing. So it was neat.
And how about you, York? Did you coming in? Did you have certain goals and objectives beyond just capture, or were you like, nope, I'm gonna win the war?
For me coming in, I just threw myself into the role of I'm lawful good. I'm a lawful good crusader type. I hate evildoers like Kel, and I want to cleanse them from the face of the earth. So that was basically my objective: was by hook or by crook, get rid of this evil necromancer guy.
So here's Kel. He's not quite the skull-faced U.S. flag wearing guy from my thumbnail, but still a bad dude nonetheless.
Very bad dude, absolutely.
All right. So enough set. Unless there do any other advice that you have, Vomitron, for a DM wanting to run a Battle Braunstein?
Yeah, I would say, get used to the idea that you're not going to control how things are supposed to be, because the Battle Braunstein will definitely push you into that if that's your comfort zone is I have to control the outcome. A Battle Braunstein like this is going to make you really uncomfortable because you really are not in control of anything anymore. You literally are.
You just got to throw your arms up on the roller coaster and just go over the hill.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Thanks for the good advice. Let's get to the part everybody's interested in. Let's hear about the stories. A little bit of background setup. It sounds like your campaign suffered from what a lot of BroSR style campaigns have, where once you turn on the patron game, eventually one patron will flatten it and kind of reach an equilibrium. So were you aware of that when other people were doing this, that like this could be the solution to that flattening?
Well, I mean, I wanted the possibility. I wasn't married to the idea that it had to happen.
Yeah.
So I
Well,
wanted
because it's not like
to.
you want to just take something away from a strong player
Right.
that's earned a lot, right? Like you don't want to just slap them.
I had been hinting that there had been a couple of foreign powers that were pretty powerful. I was thinking, well, I got to keep challenging Kel in interesting ways. So I was like, there are other entities that are outside the regional area that are way more powerful than anything that's in the area, and they were kind of like always there on the outskirts, but nothing was really materialized yet.
Okay.
And if that was going to happen, it would be kind of like in the Blackmore supplement where I think I'm blanking on his name now. Arneson basically said, "Hey, every year there might be an invasion from these, jabronis from the wilderness." And I thought, well, if I'm going to do something like that, I'm going to at least tell the players ahead of time. By the way, there are forces gathering. There may be an invasion this summer. Do what you want about that or not. And so I thought, okay, like I didn't want to just arbitrarily say there's a force of 10,000 people. They're going to burn down everything you've built up. But I wanted there to be a prospect of challenge, and we had Kel, who's a player, a player character, but we also have a couple of patrons that have been running the city of Erebor, which is a very big city, and it's run by a criminal syndicate. And that player has done a really good job of building up this network of evil criminal deeds, and kind of like just running it like the mob would run a city. And so that was the big counterweight. And up to this point, Kel and the city of Erebor have kind of worked together more or less. Like they're kind of like they have like a non-aggression understanding, but there's no reason why that had to stay that way. And I want to kind of give everybody else a chance to play a monster faction that could upset that. So for example, the Dome City, we had another player who initially wanted to sign up as the Skeksis. And the Skeksis had an army of Gartham, which had obliterated a force during a session this last year. And ever since, the players were terrified of that. And so I was like, this is a great faction because they could show up and really destroy everything. But that player had some work obligations, so they couldn't make it for the session. But it was stuff like that. I was like, okay, like I want factions that are capable of upsetting the balance if people coordinated. And actually, at the very last minute, again, a random domain encounter was a series of cloud giants that showed up in Erebor. And so
it's quite the random encounter.
The guy who was running Erebor was like, well, there's cloud giants. And I'm like, oh, well, they're obviously here to collect tribute. And so we talked about that, and that was kind of one of the rumors that went around. And then
now you got to choose whether you want to just pay it or like try to fight them and then possibly weaken yourself before someone else sweeps in, right?
Well, yeah, and then a couple of days before the Battle Braunstein, one of our players was like, "I want to run the Cloud Giants," and I was like, "Okay." Nice. So we have this faction that can float from city to city. It's filled with cloud giants that can just rain rocks down.
Oh yeah, they're catapults with no short range penalty. I love them.
Yeah. So that was at that point I was like, okay, now we're cooking. Now we've got a slew of factions that if I don't know what's going to happen, and that's what I wanted. I wanted I have no idea what's going to happen.
You wanted powerful, dangerous entities pointed at each other.
Pretty much. Yep.
A battle royale. I love it.
So I don't know. Do you want to talk about the sort of flow of what happened during the Battle Braunstein?
Sure. So you said there was like a week and a half of prep time before. Was that just absolutely bonkers crazy, or were people kind of timidly feeling out their positions, or?
I think some people were a little bit more active than others in terms of trying to pre-position themselves. Mm-hmm. I think most everybody was mostly interested in figuring out, hey, what do I know? And what are my immediate threats? And so I didn't really tell everybody too much other than what would be obvious to them. But in the case of some players, they were pretty active in trying to use whatever spells at their disposal to sort of scout things out. And, and for RDubs in York, since they were relatively new to the lore, they had a lot more questions about, what do I know about these folks? What do I know about those folks? Yeah. And I would try to give them, based on what had happened in the campaign, this is what you kind of know. This is what's known. These are your interactions with these folks. This is kind of like what the situation looks like, and kind of went off from there.
Cool. So who was like who took the first big dramatic act when the curtain went up?
I think it was the Cloud Giants, because they were pretty much, their plan was to go from city to city and just extort everybody for money. And I don't mean like a little bit amount of money. I mean like
a lot.
I think the first city they went to, which was Arcala, they wanted like, I don't know, like 24,000 gold pieces or something.
Oh my God.
Some insane amount of money. And like, I was like, someone is going to get tired of this, but people just kept paying. So
did everybody know how much money they had, or were they just like, oh yeah, sure, we pay it?
Yeah, the people were just like, I can't deal with this right now. I got other stuff. I mean, I don't really know. I haven't gone back and asked people exactly how that went down, but the Cloud Giant player was like, yeah, my plan is just to collect tribute from everybody. So he pretty much decided they were going to take on that mantle of, we are obviously the rulers and we're just collecting our well-earned tribute. So
Giant's gonna bully you for your lunch money.
Right. And and if I recall, I think Kel had sent me, because he knew the Cloud Giants were headed for Arcala, which he had taken control of at some point previously. Okay. So he said, hey, I'm going to send like 1,000 of my skeletons down there, just in case. And
I remember that.
That's where I made my mistake, dude.
Just watching as over 1,000 skeletons march past. Like,
you just see this parade.
Yes, this parade
with angry dooting.
Yes,
a lot of angry dooting. So at that point, I was like, is Kelvin planning on something? I wasn't sure. I mean, I was getting his orders, but Kel wasn't telling me what he was thinking about doing. He just told me, hey, I want to move these guys here, and he was having discussions with other people, I think, at that point.
Yeah, I was sidebarring with Kel and made some mistakes and thinking certain things were happening a certain way, not knowing the lore, and starting to make deals with the necromancer. And it ended up biting me a little bit down the line. But it was, I focused my attention pretty much on the paladin and trying to end the paladin, essentially.
Were you the only good guy in this fight?
By strict definition of good, I think so. The Eravarians, they're like mafia bosses, and we got the necromancer, of course, and this domed city. They're like they're like androids, so they can't really be called good. So I think I was.
So what do you do when you see like 1,000 skeletons marching past that seem to have no interest in you? Besides freak out.
You pull a Switzerland and you don't do anything. But here's the thing. No problem. I was told that, Kel has about 1,000 skeletons. So when I see 1,000 skeletons walk past, I'm like, okay, he's sending all of his forces to Arcala. Maybe there's an opportunity here. And
because as far as you knew, Kel was still up in the north in Brimstone, yeah?
I didn't know where Kel was, where the man himself was, but I thought, okay, if he's moving all of his forces to Arcala, then he's probably there himself, probably.
Okay.
And so, as the skeleton army marched past, I asked some mercenaries that I had hired, run by another player, the Nighthawks, to shadow them. And so then I raised my own militia and men at arms and basically followed the skeletons at a distance, kind of hoping, hey, maybe the skeletons and the giants would fight. Maybe Eravir would do something, and maybe I could make something of it.
Right on.
And that kind of led me to my opportunity. I had a couple of the androids had been put into the command structure, or the Fort Weskin, trying to kind of get closer to Yorick with the intent to kind of take him out. But when he marched, I headed over to his fort in my flying head with 50 androids and started trying to raise the fort.
You had a flying head.
I did.
Yes, he had a freaking flying head. And as soon as word got out that, oh, hey, my home base is being raised, of course I marched everything back.
all your base are belong to us.
Yeah, pretty much. And then they just up and left for some reason.
And then I went back to sidebar with Kel and say, hey, look, I got these guys bounced and kept trying to make deals with the necromancer. It was fun. And then
I can't
it went on.
Notice in the middle of all this, there's this patch of dwarves. What were they doing during all of that crazy?
Well, we didn't have anybody that took up that faction, so but that was an option for people. Yeah, there's a clan of dwarves that live right smack dab in the middle there. So that was an option people could have picked up. That would have been a lawful good faction too.
They were just singing "Diggy Diggy Hole" down in their minds.
And I mean, honestly, the players haven't really bothered with them too much. So it's another one of those things where it was a latent thread,
to be picked up later.
I mean, that area had seen a lot of activity in probably the first year of the campaign because there was an evil magic user called I had a name for him, but the players called him Orange Magic Man because he had orange robes. And
of course, because of the robes.
There was a huge battle that took place around that area, and there was a colony of dwarves that showed up, and they were like, "Hey, we want to build here." And Kel was like, "Yeah, we could use more non-chaotic things running around. So, make your home here."
So he had that kind of power that he was like, "I gift you the mountains."
Well, I think if he wanted to, yes, but I mean, really, he hasn't been terribly aggressive towards other players necessarily. Okay. He has done some stuff like there was a city that's north of this map called Dubrak, and it was kind of like the big bad evil city full of like humanoids. Mm-hmm. And he at one point had figured out that there was like a group of vampires that he was trying to get rid of, and he figured out that they were based out of Dubrak. So he marched his whole army up there and destroyed the entire city and killed everybody. Well, what do you think he did with all those bodies?
Oh, sweet.
He turned them into more skeletons, right? So when Yorick was like, "Oh, they only have 1,000 skeletons," he actually has about 3,000. So,
oh my goodness!
And every time you fight him, he gets more, right?
Right. And
it's a problem.
Kel also has a very specific tactical procedure with his skeletons. We'll get to that. But anyway.
Okay. Yeah, I don't want to wreck any Fog of War stuff. Like if there's stuff that needs to stay secret, you are, however, free to spill the beans on your own faction if you should so choose.
Well, I think the funny thing was that RDubs was like, "Yeah, I want to assassinate Yorick." And I'm like, well, they're not really trained for assassination.
How many exploding robots did you send at me? 3?
They kept popping.
Yeah, and what kept happening, it was like those Looney Tune cartoons where something blows up in Daffy Duck's face, and he's just got like black face all over him, smoke all over his face. That's basically what kept happening.
Tried it without oil first. Tried it with oil, and nothing was working.
I'm just picturing Yorick at Castle Anthrax. No, it's too perilous. It's too dangerous. I can face a little peril. Oh, bad wicked suit, lighting the grail-shaped beacon. Come give me a hug. Boom.
Yeah. I found out one was being interrogated, and that's the first one that popped. Like, because the androids have the ability to communicate at long distance pretty much instantly, and they had captured one of my androids.
Oh, okay.
And so that one exploded first without.
Like, funny thing was, at first I thought for sure that was a vampire girl because I had been trying to learn as much as the lore that I could, and I learned that there's all these vampires running around. So I thought for sure at first, oh, this has to be a vampire of some kind, but no, then it blew up, and I'm like, oh. That
was actually an available faction.
Oh.
There is a group of vampires that have a lot of beef with Kel, and so
the survivors of the city of Dubrak.
Basically. So they have, not to give away too much, but they have established safe houses in various places. And Kel has had a couple of different times where he's been like, "Hey, we're going to try to stamp out the vampires and sit in Arcala or in Brimstone. So, but outside of that, there are places where these guys have sort of reestablished themselves. And I'm like, well, and then the vampires are led by basically the vampire from Fright Night. That's how the guy is pictured, right?
Nice.
So that was an available faction, but no one took that. They wanted to play cloud giants and robots. So, which is fine. That's good. And now keep in mind when this assassination attempt is going, I think RDubs is also like, hey, I want to go down to there's a location south of Erebir, which again the players had bumped into a couple times, but never really resolved. There was a location called the Lightning Towers, and RDubs is like, hey, I want to send my bots down there, check it out, and investigate. And
it was a good move because it was going to get really tight at the Dome City very quickly. I figured out after I started leaving.
Yeah, well, what they found down there was, and the Erevirans were sending a force down there as well, was there was another one of these crystals, these malevolent, semi-intelligent, sonically endowed crystals. And the one down there was actually a lycanthrope generator. So,
oh wow,
yeah, and
this
so
is nuts.
The Erevirans were like, well, we want to capture this thing, and RDubs was like, I want to capture this thing, and there was a brief fight down there, and I think basically RDubs was like, I'm going to take that crystal and load it into the giant stone head, because I think he wanted to take it back to the Dome City. And then use it in some way. And I was like all
turn
right,
all your humans into lycanthropes.
I'm immune. The androids were immune to it, basically. So
yeah, but you didn't. You had meat people, right? Like all the guys that were renewing in your Dome City.
Exactly.
Eloy.
And the Erevirans showed up with a pretty sizable force. And
well, I failed the item save. Man, was brutal.
Yes, because the Erevirans.
Oh, I mean before when I tried to interface, when I failed and it took over my faction.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you
lost control of your own faction.
Pretty much.
That's right. Yeah, he took the red crystal back to the Dome City and said, "I'm going to hook it up." And I was like, "Well, there's a chance that the red crystal will subvert the central computer complex."
Did you just make that up on the spot, or had you considered that?
No, I knew that was. I mean, I just kind of like drew a line from what I knew about the crystal. And when he said I want to hook it up, I'm like, that's not a good idea. And I said, well, make a saving throw. And I think he rolled like a 1.
It was a 4, bro.
Yeah, and I was like,
he rolled a 4.
Bad news. The central computing complex has now been under the control of this red crystal. So he's like, oh, well, I want to, for some reason, I can't remember why you took it back to the Lightning Towers.
I think it might have been that we stuck the other one in the one down at the Lightning Tower and tried to interface, and we were still there. I can't remember 100%.
Well, I think you got the idea that Cal and other people were heading for the Dome City, and you were like, we need to
That's true. Yes, that could have been it.
When they took it back down to that location, the Lightning Towers, and I call it the Lightning Towers because there are 4 towers that surround the complex that shoot lightning out, which had incinerated some of the players' hirelings a long time ago. That's why they call it the Lightning Towers. So
right on.
They're busy trying to hook this thing back up and get it going again because they want to generate an army of lycanthropes, which is what the crystal wants. And the Ereviran force arrives. There's a battle. They're able to overcome the aunties that are there. The aunties of the Terminator horse. And so the patron for Erebir says, well, I want to have the magic user destroy the crystal. I was like, why are you going to do that? He's like, I'm going to cast a lightning bolt at it. And I was like, okay, well, that's going to do a turn of destructive damage. And I was like, well, the crystal is going to make a saving throw. Because if you look at the DMG, there's this chart about different items that make saving throws when struck by lightning crushing blows. And we rolled it. And
the guy thought of it is non-Euclidean.
Right.
Sick,
Gary
dude.
sat down one night and thought, okay, if somebody's going to shoot my gem with a bolt of lightning, how much can this ruby or crystal or diamond resist a lightning bolt?
Well, in this case, it didn't. So I was like, well, you rupture it. And when these crystals are ruptured, they release something bad happens. It's usually not great. There was a black crystal earlier in the campaign that they ruptured, and it caused a
Is
very
that when the
powerful-
Skeksis showed up? Did they like divide?
Well, I think Cal had captured it from the Orange Magic Man, and he
Okay.
ordered one of his skeletons to hit it with a sledgehammer until it broke. But he did it. He knew something bad could happen, so he put it like far, far away, and it blew up. So Cal kind of knew that destroying these things is bad. It's something bad could happen. So when they cast lightning bolt and destroyed the red crystal, I was like, well, it releases a 1 kiloton blast, basically. So it kills everybody there, and the entire area around Erebir is now irradiated with lycanthropic radiation.
Oh my gosh!
So
it was a werewolf nuke.
It was a werewolf nuke, basically. And I think the next full moon will be any day now, but that's going to be a very hot time for Erebir.
That is worse than a Sharknado. Is a werewolf nuke.
So we were able to enter the meme of the Bro SR where a city has to be nuked at some point.
Yeah. It just happens. And
I think at this point, Yorick had said, well, if Kel is busy, I want to make a deal with the Cloud Giants. I think that's how that turned out.
What happened was, of course, the Cloud Giants show up to my city and they extort me. And
that's our moment.
So I basically bribed them with a choice magic item. And they said, hey, this is a really good magic item that's worth a lot. Do you want us to do something for you? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Go up to Brimstone and knock down the walls. And they're like, okay, you want to come with? And I thought about it for about 5 seconds. And I was like, absolutely. And
all right.
And yeah, so and that's basically how that happened. Yeah.
Yeah, so the Cloud Giants began to demolish parts of the Brimstone defenses, and I think Yorick also met Kel's wife at one point.
Yes, I sent some troops to his manor, thinking, "Hey, maybe I could loot it or do something with it or whatever." And yeah, his freaking pregnant wife is there.
The necromancer's pregnant wife.
Yeah, and I did think about just shooting her right there, but she pulled out a wand and she had guards, and I'm like, all right, fine, I'll deal with you later.
Time out.
Yeah.
I'm
supposed to be the good guy. I can't just go around murdering pregnant women.
That's the problem with Paladin.
Pregnant wife.
But I mean, I've heard of Battle Braunsteins getting a little crazy, but like, well, technically you got more victory points, but I killed your pregnant wife.
That would have been funny.
I
didn't want to risk losing my paladin hood, so I decided, you know what? That's a problem for another day. Let's just worry about Kel first.
Yeah,
the way I thought it was going to happen was I thought I had stolen a march on Kel, and he would have to physically march himself and his skeleton army from Arkala up to Brimstone, because I knew he had a whole bunch of skeletons around Arkala. So I was like, okay, put some slingers and archers in the road between Arkala and Brimstone, and maybe I can deal some casualties, slow him down, get some more info on him.
Right on.
And so I encamped my troops around Brimstone, and like in game time, it's like 2 a.m. when I get reports of, here is Kel, and he has a whole bunch of skeletons, and he's like 5 miles from my current position. So I'm just like scrambling, crap. What do I do? What do I do? Where is he? How much does he have? What's happening? Ah!
Yeah.
So I look at the terrain. I'm like, okay, there's some hills and a stream over here. That's probably a good place to set up a good stand. So I immediately got all the troops up and started moving out, and that's where they caught me, was up in the hills around Brimstone.
Okay.
I had originally thought if Kel was going to have to march, I could do some magic shenanigans and like catch him like at night while he's sleeping or something, and use a plane shift scroll to just get rid of him.
Oh my gosh.
So I was going to send him to another campaign.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Time out for a couple of reasons.
Okay.
Well, first of all, and I don't know why this thought jumped in my head, but like, you know how pregnant women like are more sensitive to smell? Can you imagine being the pregnant wife of a necromancer that's just surrounded by all these rotting bodies?
Oh.
Second, DM, would you have let him plane shift a patron out of the Battle Braunstein?
Absolutely.
Okay.
If I mean, assuming the rules allowed it, I'll be like, okay, that dude's been plane shifted.
Yeah.
So
okay. Because
which again, if you're tied to this character is important, they need to stick around. AD&D may not be the game for you. So
yeah.
I'm not a witch. I'm your wife.
I'm not a witch. I'm your wife. So if he had gotten plane shifted out, she would have had to take over, I guess.
Basically,
like you just have to tell Kel's player, "Sorry, dude, no, you're playing a pregnant woman."
Yeah.
Oh, no, I
had a plan for that too. I had a freaking
You're crazy.
And I was going to level the house.
Archers.
Well, there's some stories. I've had 4 kids, so my wife
Archer's friend says my wife craved dirt during her second pregnancy. So
I've heard of that actually. I literally have heard of that. Dirt? Like no joke.
Is that like a form of pica?
I have no. Yeah, it's weird. I don't know.
Does she weigh more than a duck? Says Robert. Oh man! So this is the point at which the chat starts to take on a life of its own. So I'm just going to apologize right now for. It gets crazy at times. Sometimes it's best just to ignore them.
Yeah,
crazy is good. Crazy is funny.
But all right. I think at right about that point, when Yorick had made his move, we were bumping up against 6:30 and my time, and that was usually when I have to step away to take care of other stuff. So so we kind of decided like, hey, we would adjudicate the conflict between Kel and Yorick during the week, and there was some other follow-on stuff, folks trying to figure out what they were going to do post the Battle Braunstein.
So, like, were you satisfied? Like, when you had to quit it, were you like, okay, this did what I wanted? It set up certain conflicts. Crazy things happened. A nuke went off.
Yeah, I mean,
the pregnant woman was accosted. I think we've done our job here.
Yeah, I mean, when you have a lycanthropic bomb going off, I don't know if you can top that. Where else do you need to go? This is really
world was altered. That's what's supposed to happen, right?
Yeah. The delicate equilibrium was thrown off, and you also had kind of a neat tie-in to the next big event, which was going to be this battle in the hills, right?
Yeah, and that took us about about a week, York.
About a week.
We just set up the map and said, here are where the forces are, and then we just did round by round. And the first 3 or 4 rounds, it was not looking good for Yorick.
So when you say round by round, like, are you back in a voice channel, or are you like doing play by post kind of? How are you adjudicating this combat?
Just a text,
Okay.
Everyone would say, hey, this is what my forces want to do this round. Yorick would say, this is what I want my forces to do. We rolled initiative. We'd start playing it through just like an ADD combat.
Okay.
When you have like 1,500 skeletons against an army of, I don't know, it was like 400, 500.
It was like 300 militiamen and about 80 men-at-arms, plus about 20 characters.
Plus the halflings.
And you had clerics, right? You could turn undead.
Yeah, I had like 10 clerics. I could turn, but again, I didn't realize that even though
RDubs is laughing.
It was fun to watch.
I didn't realize that clerics can only turn a limited amount of skeletons, even if they can turn in the dust. And so, like, on the eve of the battle, I'm trying to clarify this, and James tells me, and I'm like, wait a minute, what? What? That's what the rule... Oh, shit.
That being said, York did make an appeal to the gods and said, I need help. And I was like, let's just roll percentile dice. And I'm like, that's a really good low number. I think you're going to get some out.
Yeah.
So
If you do not listen, then to hell with you.
Yes.
right. And I think he also,
If you stood against the many.
I'd like
Fantastic.
to think that sacrificing a very powerful and dear item also helped.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
And so I said, okay, well, you're going to get a group of these Celestials. I just looked in like Monster Manual 2, and there are these divas. And I said, well, the 2 of these show up. And they were the War Maidens of Marsilia. And off the battle went. So I think like the first half of the battle, they didn't do that much. Yorick's forces were disrupted by one of Kel's dirty tricks, which was a creature that had silence on an item that was running around disrupting spellcasting.
I love it.
And
so it is like fighting Macho Man Dog.
yeah. And then things got really tense when the Celestials and Kel got into a hand-to-hand combat.
Oh.
And that was like 6 or 7 rounds and them just slugging it out because neither party could really get do much damage. Spells weren't working because of various reasons. And it went to grappling. And the Yorick actually had a fantastic strategy for getting rid of Kel. Do you want to describe this?
I came up with it in the middle of the battle. I'm like rereading all these abilities. I'm like, wait a minute. Can this do what I think it does? Yes, it can. I have a chance. Baby. Because these Celestials, they can cast teleport without error. And that goes to like any plane. Like you can go anywhere in your home plane. What's the home plane of a diva? The 7 heavens.
Ah.
So I'm like, oh my gosh, if I can just like grapple Kel, all I have to do is just teleport without error back to heaven, and he's gone. I don't even care that my army is destroyed. If I can just get rid of Kel, I'm happy.
So you chose to send the evil necromancer who's been terrorizing the whole countryside to heaven. That'll show him. That'll show him. Straight to heaven for you.
Love it.
There was one grappling attempt that if it had succeeded, this probably would have been pulled off. But it didn't succeed, and Yorick never got the chance to complete another grapple.
No, I never got another chance.
But there was like an entire day where I'm like looking at the description of what people want to do, between Kel and Yorick, and I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen. It's like, all right, you need to make a grappling roll, and it just wasn't enough. I was like, shit, like the highest level PC may be gone, right? And I was like, that was kind of like uncomfortable, but at the same time, I was like, well, we're going to see what's going to happen, right? It's one of those terrifying moments of the DM when you realize this is the equivalent of a TPK. Did I set up an unfair and arbitrary challenge? Maybe, but that's AD&D, right?
Just throw your hands up.
But the players triumph, and then you're like, oh, that was amazing. So, yeah, and again, Yorick was a great champ. A good sport because he kind of was thrown into this and kind of got his face kicked in the first 2/3 of this contest and almost pulled off an unbelievable victory against all odds.
Came so close.
Yeah. So,
but what actually happened?
And also post Braunstein, people continue to send me orders about what they want to do on a weekly basis. RDubs has multiple irons in the fire with the surviving Terminator horrors. And there's a bunch of stuff that's going to be coming up in the next couple of weeks, which will continue to make life miserable for everybody involved. I can't wait.
Yeah, I'm excited.
So what happened with Kel? Are we allowed to reveal the end of that battle? Or
Kel won.
Talk about it.
Kel won. He raised a couple of the paladins who pissed off his wife to use undead servants, and they're now
well, that's what he did with
their undead existence back in Brimstone. I think everybody else, he actually packed up all the dead that he could and stripped them of all the magic items, but took the bodies back to Fort Westbin and said, here's your dead. And I think
that was nice of him.
Yeah, and I think the Paladin Order was like, we need to leave. So they packed up and fled to Erebir, to a port city that had been ruined by a Fishman invasion the year before. So Erebir was interested in having colonists.
Fishman.
Yeah. So Westwind fell under the control of Kel. So Kel now controls Brimstone, Fort Westwind, Arkala.
He almost lost it all.
He almost lost it all, but he keeps getting away with it.
Yeah. Everybody's gangster till the fish choir shows up.
Right.
I learned that from Mr. Wargaming.
I think that Fort Westman, the concession to Erebir was a free trade zone, so the mob could do whatever they want to do there. I'm not yet I don't fully understand what that relationship is, but the between Cal and the patron of Erebir, they've worked out some arrangements. So the Paladin Order has been crushed, and the remnants have fled like a ragtag group of desperate people down south. Kel certainly has solidified his control over the north, and the countryside around Erebir is irradiated with lycanthropic radiation. Oh, and
that's where the Paladins fled to.
RDubs actually told me he learned that there was a rumor of another one of these intelligent crystals near Brimstone in a ruin that, again, the players had gone into, but then decided to never go back there. So he sent his Terminator horse into this ruin, found the blue crystal, pulled it out, took it to Erebir, and then tried to crack the crystal there.
Oh my goodness.
Which
we might be breaking fog of war, but that's cool.
This crystal infects people with like a crystalline growth and turns them into catatonic zombies.
Oh my god!
So when he broke the crystal open, it infected like hundreds of people. There's an entire
times in the Muppo Valley.
Yeah, I don't know what he has in for Erebir,
but was there a moment when you were afraid that this would like destroy your campaign?
Oh yeah, but I figured if I'm not afraid that something's going to destroy the campaign, then I'm just boring, right?
Well, I mean that also there is a precedent. Like if you were to visit Trollopolis right now, you could go to the Trollopolis campaign, but if you went to the city of Trollopolis, there's been like waves of catastrophic destruction that place is a smoking hole.
Well, right, and I think it's like Mr. Stump had said that he said a static campaign is a boring campaign. Like you always have to have change, and I think that's really good advice. And I think if you look at the lore addicts, that want to establish their binders of 10,000 years of history, to them this would be terrible. Like you can't mess with my perfect backstory. But I'm like, the whole point of having this conflict is to mess things up, and to shake things up and have players put their dent into stuff. So
yeah.
And was I scared? Absolutely. There's a part of me that's always scared that I'm going to mess up and the game is not going to be fun, and that's too much treasure. And as it turns out, there's never enough treasure because AD&D just sucks money out of players, or out of their characters rather.
It does.
And I think as long as people are kind of digging the stuff that they're creating as being participants, you can't ruin it. It's just people just get more and more invested, I
agree. I've been thinking about this. I was talking to someone who plays mainly 5e, and I was trying to tell him what's cool about the way that we do this. And it just occurred to me, I have never heard players joking around or reliving moments, and like the point of their story that they're sharing is this amazing thing that the DM did. Right? Like I keep using this as an example, but like Critical Role with the Calamity thing and Brennan Mulligan, everyone tells me, this is peak Critical Role when there's like a character and he like just does this evil monologue and like rips the guy's face off and brings him back from the dead over and over again. And like none of the players are playing. They're just sitting there acting for the camera. right? Like they're so impressed, and I'm like, nobody's playing, nobody's doing anything. They're just watching this guy, do his one-man show. I don't hear players talking about that stuff. I don't hear them talking about, oh, there was this amazing twist in when we were halfway through the module. They talk about the crazy crap that they got up to and the stupid thing they tried to do and how it backfired in their face. And like, what better way to create a campaign than to like, those are the events. That is the history, is all this stupid stuff you get to relive that you did that was like disastrous or wonderful, but always hilarious.
Actually, I think now that you talk about that, I think the peak for me was for the half an hour after the red crystal was detonated. We had people that were using Google Maps to chart out a 1 kiloton blast radius to figure out if the overpressure would kill you instantly or just give you a lethal dose of radiation, depending on how far you were from the blast center. And I'm like, yeah, this is peak gaming right here. This is great.
When all of your players simultaneously got put on a list for their internet searches.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone went to the blast radius map for sure. I know I was there instantly trying to figure out if this was being done right.
Yeah.
Well, the play style too. It's like the next week when this battle's going on, I'm working, but I'm jumping away from work to see what the hell's happening with Kel and frickin' Yorick, because it's now interesting because of what happened at the Braunstein. It really does build a
life. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that to me is another tell of how much I enjoy a system is for both the DM and the players. How much time do you spend thinking about it outside of the game, right? Like 40K, that's fun because when you're not at the table, you're painting your miniatures and you're preparing. And you've got the fun of anticipation. It's like going up the hill on the roller coaster, right? Battletech, maybe it's you're engineering your mech and you're like, oh, I'm going to give it, ferrofibrous armor or whatever it's been years since I played Battletech, but you know what I'm saying? Like you're building a mech, you're spending alone time enjoying the hobby until you get together and play it. And for me, and I'm sorry if I step on any toes when I say this, but for me, oftentimes with conventional 5e play, I can feel like the DM pours everything into prepping, and then the players don't even think about it until they're there at the table. And then even while they're there, while it's not their turn, they're on their phones, they're thinking about something else, right? And like you may have fun memories of something that happened at the table, but you're not like checking your phone, obsessing over, well, what are those dang vampires up to? Are they going to cause me trouble before next Thursday?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've definitely noticed that with my 5th edition group. It's not with everyone, but it's definitely a thing I've noticed. Was at least some of the time. I don't see the amount of obsessiveness and back and forth that I do in this AD&D MAGA game that I've been a part of. And
make adventuring great again.
Yes, absolutely. Make adventuring great again.
You're doing it. You guys are doing it.
We are. And
one crystal at a time, baby.
Yes, one crystal at a time. And I dearly hope one day I can have awesome stuff like this happen in my game.
The crystal shards are like the crystal dust is going to be like a drug in the future of this game, right? People are going to be looking for that stuff.
Yeah. Well, I really hope some rolls go certain ways coming up here in the next few weeks. I really do.
Having said that and thrown that out there, let me also just caveat that and say that's been my experience with 5e. I know there's people playing it at a much higher level. I got a buddy on Twitter, Scythian Barbecue. I want to play with him because I feel like he approaches it in a much different way than I was. So I'm not just trying to
white. Breaker's doing it too, man. Like there's some guys that are doing some really cool stuff.
Crossface, even with the school kids, right? So I'm not trying to poop on the system. And if you love it and you play it well, more power to you. All I can do is report on my own experiences, and for whatever reason, that's been how it's gone for me. So just wanted to. I know I'm supposed to be a bully because I'm in the Broasar, and I know I'm not supposed to say on the other hand, but
you're a teddy bear.
I can't sport the stash. I'm not a heel. I'm a baby face. Although the pressure is mounting.
It's the inspection, bro, and you failed.
Yeah. Where is it?
Is it a requirement to have a
Lip
mustache if you're in the Broasar?
Say what?
Are you supposed to have a mustache if you're in the Broasar?
I am, apparently, and everyone
Yes,
else
he
is
is.
fine with whatever they rock.
I
Brian.
tried growing facial hair a few years ago. It did not go well.
Hmm.
Never been. I mean, I think my wife was like, "Look, you gotta commit," but I don't think this is working. Shave it off.
I can't grow it any more than it is right now. It doesn't grow anymore.
I get like the junior high mustache. I get like an upside down T. It's
Yes!
Oh, man,
There we go, dude. He has claimed it and
Okay,
taken the
right there.
seat, Moose.
That thing is amazing.
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
you. Thank you.
See, I can't grow that. No, I can't get that.
A couple weeks ago, I got it trimmed up a bit, so it's not even at. I'm not even at full power.
Oh man, you got to grow it back.
I'm so
It's always
glad
about growing
you just
more.
let me off the hook.
My girlfriend doesn't like it. Is the problem?
So does
Archer's
he-
friend says facial hair required.
I try to be really mean on Twitter, but maybe I should just go full baby face. I'm just not mean enough.
Bob Stevens says
That was a base reveal, dude. That was big. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
That was amazing. He's like, boom. I got you.
Nice.
I wasn't going
doesn't even wanna
to show off
focus
or
on
anything,
you
but then we just moved.
We
into
planned it. We
competition.
planned the reveal, right? It was
Yeah.
planned.
Planned it all along.
Oh man, let's whew. What have I not like? What did we miss? What are some of the crazy? Because you guys have said this is one of the stupidest Battle Braunsteins that's ever. Like, what was the parts of it that made you just
Grapple
think,
came into play a lot. Like the battle,
Yeah.
like we talked about it a little bit, the battle down at the lightning towers. I had the lightning towers shooting down at, and the thieves trying to come in, lightning shooting down, and then I charge out the Terminator horse, and they do their thing, but all of a sudden, what is it, 200 freaking footmen? They grapple my freaking Terminator horse, dude. Like
Yeah,
all of them. They
right.
grappled freaking 50 or 40 Terminator horses at one time, right? So they grapple them all down.
"Get your
And
dirty
so, of
paws
course-
off of my horse."
So of course I exploded them all. So I popped them all, and I think they did kill the normal men. They killed quite a bit of the normal men
Yeah, they did.
when they exploded.
Oh, the humanity.
It was
So
Oh,
bad.
man.
What happened to the halflings?
Yeah, Steven wants to know what happened
All
to
the
those halflings.
halfling militia that showed up were turned into killed
Very sorry.
halfling undead force.
Undead halfling paladin militia.
Mayor Griddlestack. I tried to get them all out. I really did, but Mayor Griddlestack is missing in action, and everyone got annihilated basically, except for the guys that I posted in the hills. I posted like 200 or something halfling slingers and archers in the hills as a blocking force, and they just never did anything. So
And hell hate halfling.
there's like, I don't know, 400 halflings, including all the dependents with the refugees. So
Well, the
some of them made it
dependents.
out.
It's the halfling dependents that pay the biggest price of all.
Yes.
Archer's friend points out that Burt Reynolds was the highest paid actor in Hollywood for a reason.
yes,
Wow. Thank you kindly.
Well,
the battles you were running a hybrid like 1E and chainmail, weren't you?
It was all AD&D.
It was.
So-
I thought we had some chainmail hit up in there, but
If there was, it wasn't intentional, but we had used swords and spells for a couple of battles early on because I
That's my
wanted to
favorite.
understand how that system worked. So if that had bled over, that's probably where that stuff should shown up. Because my assumption was if there was something in AD&D that wasn't explained, you could look in swords and spells and it kind of showed you how to work with scaled figures. But I also figure if swords and spells wasn't enough, then it probably was saying, well, obviously from chainmail, this is how you do it. Like,
So-
for example, this I think swords and spells specifically calls out how if you have a high rate of fire, you can move and fire. But AD&D doesn't say anything about that, right?
Right.
So it's like if you extrapolate from swords and spells, you're kind of like, well, I guess you could move a little bit and still shoot one out of your, if your range of fire 2, you could still move a little bit and shoot once, stuff like that.
If you
It
were
was the range, the missiles were the issue with my towers there for sure, because he sniped those crystals out pretty quick.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You know, that was good.
I was just going to ask.
That was I think the weakness of the lightning tower is that the range of a lightning bolt is less than the range of a longbow.
Yep. They were just outside of its range when they were hitting it. Yeah.
I was going to ask, if you were learning, if you, like, let's say you got bonked on the head and you got amnesia and you had to learn first edition all over from start, would you go for the little brown books and chainmail first and then segue in, or would you just start with AD&D and then if you had any further questions or gaps, then go back to the other material?
I mean, yeah, I think that's part of it, but I think even more important is having people that have been playing for a while and are really interested in looking at the rules. And I've said this before, like one of the things that I used to do is I used to go to Dragon's Foot all the time and look at what other people were discussing. But 99% of the replies were people talking about how they didn't understand the rules and they wanted to come up with some kind of weirdo, this is how I do it at my table. And I'm like, that's not what's written down in the rules.
We call those OSR products.
Right. But occasionally you would come across somebody like, and there are 2 guys in particular. One was called Stormcrow and the other guy was Nagora. And if you read their replies, they would talk about what was actually in the rules and how to apply the rules. And I was like, if you can find people like that, that's how you learn the game. If you're reading the rules yourself, like, this doesn't make any sense. I don't understand how this works. Because you're working in a context, like you're kind of like I did. Like I grew up on BX and Mold Bay and Holmes and stuff like that. And it's like, there's a lot of stuff in AD&D that you're like, assassins, that doesn't make any sense. And it really wasn't until I started looking at a very few select people that actually knew what they were talking about. And I think also like you could go to Rick Stump's Discord and say, hey, there's this passage in AD&D. How is this supposed to work? And you could actually get some intelligent responses. So I think having a community of people that have played for a while and could give you the real dope. Don't listen to the people who are like, well, obviously it doesn't make any sense, so I made up my own rules. Like, that's not very helpful.
They just punk out and take the easy route.
Yeah,
and they don't know what the real game is.
But AD&D is not. I can see why people were like, we need a basic set or we need a condensed version, because if you set this in front of a 12-year-old, they're going to lose their minds. It's going to take them. Yeah, it's hard to parse for how you always raise you. Yeah, exactly. With AD&D, it's not a trivial rule set, and I think it does require time and patience to digest. And like I said, I've been reading these books for 30 years, and it's probably in the last 5 years that I feel like I've gotten a real good handle on them. And there's still stuff, and I'm like, we'll be playing a game, and one of the players will be like, I think this rule works differently. And I said, well, why do you say that? And they will talk about it, and I'm like, and I'll go back and reread the section that I've read 20 times. I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. Your interpretation is correct, and what I thought I knew was totally wrong.
Yeah.
Which is AD&D is weird like that, but I love it because it's like that. Like there's always little surprises in there.
Yeah.
That surprise is what makes it a more fun book to read than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
So I'm actually running my first session of first edition on Saturday. I invited a bunch of people from church. I invited a bunch of people from work. The reason I invited a bunch is because I thought a lot of them would say no. I've actually got 9 people showing up and 2 maybes. So I'm like, ooh, I don't know how this is going to go. But I've been trying to prep the setting, and I went on hexfriend.net and just took the standard size hex file, which is probably too big because it's like 15 hexes top to bottom. And but I started rolling up the terrain random. I started rolling up the inhabitation just right out of Appendix B.
Well, you got some good depression rolls in there, man. Like, I was looking up the map. Like, you got a pretty cool freaking roll.
I'm like, that's the Underdark. That's such a huge canyon.
Pretty sick. I thought I saw a comment like, oh, that doesn't make any sense. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, dude, that looks sick, bro. Yeah. Like, it's gonna be fun.
That's how I've been rolling up all the monsters and terrain and stuff for my game. I just go to the appendices.
Yep.
Yeah. And like the non-Euclidean part, it's like everything makes sense until you roll a castle, and there's that little star, and then you go to 182, and then all of a sudden you realize how deep the castle rules go, and like
Yeah.
while you're picking out or not picking out but rolling up the magic items for the level 4 fighters that are in charge of each of the forces you get at the camp, like it gets
all those
deep,
fighters,
man.
all with a different chance to get armor and sword and miscellaneous weapon and
their
potions.
henchmen, and then there's the ones that are totally deserted, and there's the ones that are deserted, and then you get to roll up what monsters are in there. It is just, I was laughing my head off doing it. It was so much fun.
It's a ton of fun, and that's why solo AD&D is a great way to learn the books. Playing it solo is an amazing way to learn those rules, especially if you throw receipts out to people to tell you when you mess it up.
Yeah.
So.
And hang around with guys like you that are also excited about it and interested in like talking about the rules. That's like the fastest way to learn, I think. I do want to get to this comment. Purple Druid witnessed the chainmail melee rounds discussion this week. That has been fire. If you guys are
that
watching,
ruined my weekend. I did nothing but research frickin' chainmail for like 2 days straight, dude.
Because it's like, oh, do you keep doing melee until it's over before you end the round? And then Steven also had a brilliant post, I think just today, talking about like, if you aren't serious about learning the rules, don't disparage the guys that are. Like, just because you hand wave, I'm horribly misquoting it, Steven. Please, if you want to put a link in the chat to your tweet, your Zeet, your X post, what do you want to call it?
That was pretty much. That was pretty close to what he said.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty amazing. Brian reminds us that we also need a few pre-made patrols. Thanks. I did not think of that. And then to answer your question, yes, I do have a desert that goes into a swamp on my map. That happened. But
I'm one of those guys that thinks that's stupid.
I at least prepped enough of the hex flower to see where the mountains are, Steven. So I'll be able to tell them they can see mountains in the distance. So
I always forget the freaking castle and patrol roll when I'm at the table and I'm rolling for people. I always forget that freaking D20, dude. Always. That's my Achilles heel right now that I need to remember.
Somebody in chat put the page that the patrol roll is on, because I don't know how I missed that one. That must be in the random monsters in the Appendix C, maybe.
Oh, God, I have it here.
Yeah, it does talk about the odds in an inhabited area hitting a patrol, and it talks about the composition of patrols. And Gary says, yeah, you should probably roll some up. And I think actually in Rogue's Gallery, there's a whole section where it has pre-made patrols.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's a good book, actually. I love that book. But there is a D20 roll that you roll the D20 when you do the encounter roll, and if it's a 1 on a D20, you encounter a patrol or a castle, essentially, as your hex cost.
There's a lot of castles. I got 8 castles show up. I mean, not all of them are inhabited, but like one of them has brigands and 3 of them have characters, and I'm just like, yo.
Well, I think that was intentional, right? Because a lot of people complain about, well, you can't do Jeffro-Gaxian timekeeping because it'll just take too long to build your castle. And I'm like, dude, there's castles everywhere. Just take one over.
Yeah. Well, I've got a medium castle with a keep that is totally deserted. It's in disrepair, but it's not going to take 2 years to repair it.
Yeah.
So 5 and 20 in inhabited areas are a patrol, but in a 1 and 20 in uninhabited areas, it's a fortress. And that's the thing I always forget to roll a freaking fortress, dude.
Yeah, there was some of the players got off on this wild goose chase last year, and they were trying to make their way back to civilization. And sure enough, one of these fortress rolls came up, and it was inhabited by, unfortunately for them, there were actually 2 rolls. One was like an evil magic user and their henchmen, and the other fortress was vampires. So,
oh yeah, I remember reading about this.
And they had like these like multi-armed ape servitors. I came up with a region called Appalachia.
Nice.
And they've never gone back there because they got their butts kicked.
They really did.
Yeah, they did. I think actually
it was like a high-level monk or something.
Yeah, the monk, which at the time the player was like, this is going to be the character that will take out Kel. It was the great hope for Team Good. He got killed, and then was turned into a vampire. So
Vampire monks, how horrifying.
yeah, exactly. So that's going to come up at some point, I'm sure.
That's how you get a blade.
But all of that
You're
because
right.
they were just
Yeah.
two random rolls from a fortress. Just crawling through the wilderness.
I did have
Yeah,
a comment.
cool.
Someone said that they thought that creating that stuff from scratch is more. Well, they appreciate that approach better than randomly rolling it, and I can see that. I mean, Gary tells you to do that in first edition. The tables that I'm using for everything, like he says, this is if they wander off the map. Here's how you can generate it on the fly. And yes, it may be less creative to use that table, but here's the other thing. Once I start rolling up the random, you cannot help but your subconscious will hook stuff together and suggest. What does it mean that two large castles are only a mile away from each other? What's going on there? Right? Or there's things that I just would never have ever come up with. Like,
well, and it builds a setting that it's intended to build. And I mean, Oney builds a freaking setting. And that's what's so beautiful about it is like later editions of the game pulled the setting out in the splat books. But now you have Oney that builds a freaking amazing setting.
Right on. And I would have never thought of like having a large fortress castle complex and then just filling it with giant wasps. Like that. That's not something that I naturally would have come up with. But like you roll it and you're like, oh my gosh, they're going to be so disappointed. Let me keep up with the chat here. Steven says, haha, that's Brigadine. You just build a curtain wall around a dungeon entrance. There's your castle.
Or you just hire some masons and brick up the dungeon entrance.
Deal with you guys later. Czar Bombadil says, I don't think it's less creative at all. Exactly. You have to make the rules work. Can't do that without a good imagination. Mm-hmm. And it can take you from 0 to 1, and it can fascinate you and make you excited in the process. And I think that may be one of the antidotes that we have to DM burnout, where I'm not having to like go down deep into some primal part of myself and haul things into reality. I can just roll the dice and see what happens. And then I get fascinated. And I'm like, what is going on there? And as I think about it, that's when things bubble up, shower thoughts or whatever. And you like crack up or get excited or interested.
Oh yeah.
I'm a fan.
Yeah. And that's what's going on in my 5th edition game right now is, literally, people, one of my patrons is sending out patrols along this road, and I'm like, okay, what do the patrols run into? So I've been using the standard AD&D random encounter rules, and they ran into some bandits. And the bandits have like, 30 or 40% chance that they have a layer in the hex. Okay, now they have a layer in the hex. Okay, so they're okay, so what kind of layer is it? It's a castle. They got a ballista. They have this many guys.
Yeah.
And then not only is there not only are there bandits in the hex, but in the very same hex, just across the road, there's a tribe of ogres. And,
is that why you put Ogre Dawn in there?
Yes, Ogre Dawn.
Yeah.
So so my PCs run into some ogres when they went out on patrol one time, and so they ran into like 19 ogres. They're like, oh crap, let's get out of here and get some help. So they run back to town, get a bunch of men at arms to come with them, and then they try and find the ogres again. Instead of the ogres, they run into a chimera.
Oh
and
man!
So I'm like, so I roll reaction, and chimera is like indifferent. So I'm like, okay. Let's make this interesting. The chimera is going to act like a cat and like fly down and say, meow, like what's this? What's going on here? So like they threw a bunch of food at it, and so like, everyone was joking how they're like throwing McDonald's at the chimera. So I'm like, okay, so if they're throwing McDonald's food at the chimera, it's probably going to get poisoned. Let's roll some dice to see if it happens. It does. So then it starts vomiting, and everyone's like, hey, let's take this thing out. So they're 50 men at arms with longbows and javelins. Like take out the chimera in 2 rounds.
That's the kind of thing that's on the players, though. Like if that had gone bad for them,
Yeah,
right?
could have
Like
gone
it's
a
like,
lot
well,
worse.
you had to mess with it. You couldn't just let it meow and move on. Right?
Right.
Your death is earned.
But no, they took
The
it out
one
in
he
2
books are
rounds.
pretty amazing, man. Like Brian and Jeffro I had a conversation on X at one point about the Boot Hill conversion. And so it sparked, like it was right before the new year. And so I started a solo game with some privates that were Civil War privates that went to sleep in a cave, woke up. And the random encounter was they woke up in a cave with a freaking hill giant in it,
Oh,
right?
man.
But they had their Civil War repeaters. And so he ran out. And honestly, like I've been playing this thing and doing like campaign turns. And it turned up, I kept rolling lycanthropes, and it's always werewolves and always werewolves. So what's happening right now is I'm using the change tables in the game and rolling the nightly changes and getting the percentages of who's getting turned and all this. And actually one of the forts and the fortresses that rolled up, the whole thing got freaking turned into lycanthrope for the most part. And the PCs they made it out, but it really does. It's amazing how you can play any genre with this thing. It's a super gonzo like campaign and setting that it builds, but it ties together really well.
Well, that's the thing from both York and your story is like the first edition DMG, you can bring that stuff into any of your systems and it will make it better.
Yep.
Vomitron, there's something on the map we did not talk about.
No.
I see a little dragon that says Bronze Buddy.
Bronze Buddy. That was another
great story.
potential faction. Bronze Buddy was a bronze dragon that the players had learned about, and they said, "Hey, we're going to go make friends with it." And they actually did end up meeting the bronze dragon. I came up with this idea that the dragons want gems because they eat the gems. So they went around, grabbed a bunch of gems, fed it to the dragon to get it to help them with the fishman invasion.
Weren't you just telling us that 1E finds ways to destroy your money?
Yeah.
You're feeding a dragon gems.
Well, it's a pair of bronze dragons, but the one that they agreed to help them was the bronze dragon. They just called Bronze Buddy. So they actually, and Kel was involved with this too, of course, because the Fishman invasion was huge. So Kel had brought a bunch of undead to help out the city. And there was a big battle, and I was like, there's a couple of like really powerful demons that are controlling this army. They're Cthulhu-esque entities. And I thought, well, there's going to be this big fight. Well, Bronze Buddy shows up, attacks it with a breath weapon, and kills the head demon monster like almost immediately. And I'm like, well, they just ruined my entire game. I was really upset, but the players were like stoked. They were like, this is awesome. We love this guy. And they won the battle and were able to turn the fishfolk invasion back into the sea.
Awesome.
But so Bronze Buddy was an available faction, but people elected to pick other stuff, which again, that's fine. So yeah, Bronze Buddy's still out there.
Right on, man. All right, well, guys, I want to respect your time. We once again have gone, almost, it's 37 minutes over. So any last thoughts about Battle Braunsteins in particular? If someone's thinking about doing this for their game, should they try it? Should they wait until, like, let's say you're just starting, like you're like me.
Yeah.
Should we start off with a Battle Braunstein to get things rolling, or do you think you just start off with a town and a dungeon, and you wait until the campaign has built up enough capital to justify it?
I think that's what I would do. I think if you're starting with new people, I think if you got a bunch of people that have been playing AD&D for a long time, and there's a setting that you kind of want to build out, and everyone kind of knows what they're doing with AD&D, I think a Battle Braunstein is fine. But if you have new people, just start with the town and the dungeon and your 2 or 3 hexes. I think that's all you really need, and things just kind of spiral out from there.
Right on.
Yeah, that's where I put my vote as well. Is start small.
Mudcore's good.
Mudcore.
Mudcore's good. Yeah, RDubs is a Mudcore enthusiast.
Yeah.
Well, if your players don't get any better, then you get to do Mudcore forever, right?
That's very true, dude.
That's right.
All right. So if people want more Yorick, if they can't get enough RDubs and they just need more Vomitrons in their life, how can this audience follow you guys, see what you're doing? Now's your chance to plug anything you got going on.
I've been toying with the idea of starting up a Substack and just putting down all my ideas and whatnot onto it.
Right on, man.
I'll reach out to you and when I get it set up, and then you can see how I have this. I'll write about my Frankenstein homebrew of 5th edition Axe and AD&D.
Wow,
It's
sounds complex.
in, the Kingdom of Karamakos from Star, isn't it?
Yes, I
Nice.
decided to start with I wanted to start with a established setting that also didn't have like a huge steaming pile of lore I had to worry about. So I'm like, oh wait, the old expert setting has this thing called Karamakos. This is cool. And so I took that and I took a bunch of old modules, keep on the Borderlands and all that stuff, placed them on the map, and my players said they only played 5th edition, so I was like, okay, let's 5th edition, let's play 5th edition.
Kind of ease them into it.
Yeah, ease them into it. And now I got a couple of patrons and a bunch of players, and they're trying to go after the ogres.
Right on. Yeah. So, yeah, when you get that up, send me the link, and I'll put it in the description for this video.
Absolutely.
And I'll share it around on Twitter as well. How about you, RDubs? Where can people follow your stuff, man?
Twitter.
You
Follow
wanna-
Vomitron.
He's
He's got good ideas. Mine are shit.
You're the chainmail master now.
That's Druid in there, man. The dude is supposed to be painting Mordheim and building Mordheim terrain all weekend, and he goes and buys a bunch of freaking cubes and starts freaking priming and spraying cubes and running freaking chainmail in Discord. Fucking
He might have already had those cubes painted.
Yeah.
I don't know where it is. I bought a book because of just talking to him. And as soon as I showed him I bought it, he's like, now you need to buy these. Go to the dollar store, get these wooden cubes, and paint them up. And you're good to go.
He's not kidding, though. If you have cubes, you can play any game.
Right.
It's not a joke. If you have something to play as a base, you're good to go.
Yeah, and if you're a dice fudger, you can use them as 6-siders.
Yeah, just put 6s everywhere, bro.
No, you don't even worry about it. It's too psychologically damaging to even have the pips come up. Just throw them, and then you get to determine.
Just throw them on the ground.
All right, Vomitron. Especially if they're fascinated with your campaign now. I think I got a banner for you because I built it beforehand.
Yeah, that's the blog where I occasionally will write session reports. I'm no BDubs, so I don't always put a session report in, but I feel like there was something particularly interesting, or I just need to rib the players a bit. I'll put a session report and call them cowards. But we have a Discord focused on the AD&D game. If people like AD&D and they want to play, if they want to drop me a message on Twitter, I can get them an invite link if they just want to hang out and lurk, or they want to play, or just be in the peanut gallery. That's fine too. We're always welcoming players. We have an international crew of players. So
right on.
It's a good server. It really is a good group.
I mean, it's Jeffro.
Hey, Jeffro showing up. How's it going, bro?
Oh my goodness, Jeffro.
Yeah. So that's one way you can support these guys. Follow them on all the things. And another way you can let them know that you appreciated this time is to click on the like thumbs up button. And if you want more of this craziness, there's more Battle Braunsteins going to happen. Go ahead and feel free to subscribe. And I just want to thank you guys for your attention. We are not signing off just because Jeffro just jumped in.
But that's what you said, man.
Yeah, I was like, as soon as he's here, we got to split. No, I want to thank you guys, especially for going a full hour and 45 minutes over with me. Oh yeah, Brian Reninger is going to be doing a Gangbusters Battle Braunstein. I'm really excited for that, and
nice.
Hopefully, I can convince him to come on this show as well. I don't know if I've ever had you on yet, Brian, to talk about that. There's a lot of stuff I'd want to have Brian talk about.
Is the name of the game going to be?
Yeah, Brian's got some good stuff to say.
Who are you going to call? Gangbusters? No, that's not right. Jeffro's glad we're still going, man. Are you
I'm
talking
just
about
waiting
this
for
episode or my
more
channel?
recon. I need a Braunstein recon game, dude. So when someone wants to run a recon game, let me know.
Gang Brosters.
Well, we
Love
did.
it. Gang Roasters. There you go.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for being with us, and we'll see you next time here on This is Dunder Moose.